All right.
Copy.
Sounds good.
Yep.
It's you.
Ooh.
Yeah.
When I woke up this morning, I was feeling pretty dangerous. About the past and about the future.
Welcome back to Draftvice, everybody. It is me, as Walter. I'm here. We're back, and we're doing another live show. Hopefully the audio and the Wi-Fi hold up. I know the audio is better this time. I'm pretty sure, at least on my end. The Wi-Fi, I fixed that a little bit as well. Moved the routers around, and now, dude, it's over. I can't believe it. It's over. I've waited all year for this. It's like Halloween and Christmas all rolled into one, except without the dressing up. But yo, we're still doing a live stream, and we're back. We got a couple of friends from the weekend. We got some new friends as well. So I'm going to bring them on up, and here we go. Here's your panel, everybody. From top left to the right and then down on the bottom. It starts out on the top with Kris DiBlasio, Dr. D. You remember him from multiple nights of the draft. Say hi, Mr. DiBlasio.
Hello, everybody. Say
And
hello,
to his
hello, everybody.
Hey, everybody.
And to his right, it is Harry Van Ness. Remember him from all the times he's been on the show, and as well as the live stream. Underneath them, two new guests. It is Andrew Rich and his son Colby. Colby's probably going to know more about the draft than his dad, which is kind of like how it goes in my family.
Way more.
And to his right is obviously the man, the myth, the legend, Shane McMurdo, everybody. Say hi, Shane.
Forks up. Go Sun Devils.
Rocket, man. Rocket. Yeah, so we are back. The draft is over, right? And, I mean, it's sad, right, you guys? I mean, I don't know how much you guys wait for all this, right? But for me, it's sad. There's also news, you guys. Jameis Winston's probably going to sign with the Saints. And how do you guys feel about that? We'll start with Kris. What do you think about Jameis Winston signing with the Saints?
I don't get anything the Saints are doing right now. They signed Taysom Hill to an extension.
Yes, that's true, too.
Winston, they're saying, is only going to sign a one-year deal.
Well, I think it's to give him the opportunity to leave if he wants. And then, he goes there, he recoups a little bit of his value. They get a high-end backup if Breeze goes down. And then
But if he doesn't play at all, then what value does he redeem? I don't know. I thought there were better landing spots for Winston.
Potentially. Harry, what do you think about that?
I like it because if Breeze goes down, you're not going to let Taysom Hill as your starting quarterback. That's all there is to it. And I know Jameis Winston has had some problems with interceptions, but maybe he could just get his head together. The pressure's off of him being a full-time starter, and maybe he'll come in and play well. So I like it. I like it.
Andrew, what do you and your son think about that? What do you think about Jameis Winston going to the Saints?
I think it's a smart idea just because it's only for a 1-year deal, and they don't have much cap space, so it's a cheap deal. And again, you don't really want Taysom Hill as your starting quarterback. If Brees goes down, and Jameis Winston, for all the interceptions, is still a good quarterback. So
I agree with you on that, man. I agree because honestly, Taysom Hill, they gave him an extension. It's a 2-year, $16 million extension. So what do? You're paying him $8 million a year, but he's basically your tight end 2, or it might be your tight end 3 eventually after the guy they drafted this year. Your RB3, your wide receiver 4. He's just kind of a do-it-all worksmith. Your up man and your special teams. So I don't really know if they really think of him as a quarterback. I think they think of him as an offensive weapon. Shane, what do you think? And then we'll get on to some more draft-related stuff.
I mean, I think with all his experience of already throwing to the Saints, they saw why they wanted him. He's, the whole thing is to say to recoup his value, but, they're saying Peyton and Breeze might be the ones to fix him. But last year they said the same thing about Arian. And then, Kris said, earlier, there was better landing spots for Winston. Nobody wanted him. If there was better landing spots, he would have been, because there's a lot of teams out there with need, and nobody even sat to meet with him. The best thing I can see coming out of this is if a team gets a quarterback injury in preseason or training camp, especially if there is no training camp, the injuries are going to be more likely. Somebody might offer way more than they should to New Orleans to get him. So that's one possibility, but I mean, I'm pretty apathetic towards it in general.
That's true. That actually happened a couple years ago in Minnesota, where they traded a first-round pick to the Eagles to get Sam Bradford. Yeah, so I mean that's a possibility, and it's stock. It's the same reason why the Eagles, drafted Jalen Hurts, is they think it's a stock that they think might go up. Speaking of, we're talking about the draft. I see Kris. He's like, I don't believe in that. I wonder if it's going to fall on one of his worst drafts lists, because that's what we're talking about today. We're talking about the draft, our reaction to the draft, a couple of our favorite teams, a couple of our least favorite teams. Kris, you go first. What's your reaction to the draft that happened over the weekend? What are your 2 favorite teams and how they drafted, and what are your 2 least favorite teams?
My 2, I had a lot of favorites. Some of them. Buffalo just didn't have enough picks. I like what they picked, but they didn't have a lot. Now they got Stephon Diggs with the trade, but I'm gonna go with Baltimore. Oh no, wait a second. What'd I do?
I don't know, but you're naming drafts that you're not gonna use, so that's cool.
Forget what I wrote down. Oh no, I have it here. Sorry. Very organized. I'm gonna go with Baltimore. Yes, Baltimore was definitely one of them. I like what they did. They got great value in getting Patrick Queen where they did. The running back, J.K. Dobbins, fits perfectly in what they want to do. Defensive tackle, Matabuke, will fit right in with them. Even the second, third-round pick, Devin Duvernay, the wide receiver. They got a couple O-linemen in the 3rd and 4th round. I just think they have a philosophy in drafting, and they really stuck to it. And I think they had an excellent draft. Like I said, I think Queen is one of the best picks in the draft value-wise where they got him. So I think that set their draft off right away as a good draft. The other team that I thought did really well that I'm going to name here is the Dallas Cowboys. And I hate everything about the Dallas Cowboys. I mean,
yes.
From top to bottom, there's nothing.
Do you want to disclose why you hate the Dallas Cowboys?
Because I'm a New York Giants fan.
There we go.
And Cowboys fans are annoying no matter what fan you are. Because Cowboys fans have this sense of entitlement for a team that hasn't won a title in longer than Kobe's been alive.
So give us your points on. Yeah, give us your points on.
Picks these are impact players right away, and CeeDee Lamb, Trayvon Diggs, and Neville Gallimore.
Yeah.
And the Lamb pick, some people didn't understand why they did it, but man, that makes their offense that much more explosive. And they even said it when CeeDee Lamb was there. They were just like, we can't pass that guy up. even though they didn't have a top need at receiver.
Yeah, no. Sometimes you're just building on strength. Did anybody else on the panel have a particular disagree with either the Ravens or the Dallas Cowboys as a good draft or top end draft as a favorite?
No.
Any contrarian points?
That's two.
I think Shane's saying
the Cowboys got not only with. Huh?
What were you saying?
No, that's 2 top 3 drafts right there. He was right. He nailed them, especially Dallas. The pick they got was way above, or they got him way later than they should have gotten in the draft. So they just killed it.
Yeah, people were thinking they were going to take Diggs in the first round because they needed a corner. He fell to them in the second, and like you said before, you're getting a blue chip wide receiver out of CeeDee Lamb in the first round at 17 though, where you thought he was going to be top 5, top 10 pick. I totally agree. Neville Gallimore, good defensive lineman. Even what they did on day 3, they got Tyler Biadasz, who they did lose Travis Frederick this year, so they do need to replace him. They do have a couple of guys in house, but again, you're trying to play the lottery game. Okay, that guy didn't work out. Maybe we'll replace him with Biadasz. Maybe you'll use Joe Looney, who I don't think is going to be the real replacement, or the guy in house who they drafted last year, Connor McGovern. So Harry, who are 2 of your favorite drafts so far?
Well, I think I really like the Raiders taking Henry Ruggs. Nah, I'm kidding. My 2 favorites are probably Baltimore, like Kris said. I like the Arizona Cardinals. Baltimore because, as I said a few days ago, Patrick Queen, great linebacker, helps build on the culture of defense over there, and he's adding more talent to an already stacked D. They got Dobbins second round. He's gonna give help Mark Ingram out, who had a great year last year, but again, he's not getting any younger, and he'll have Dobbins, his role is gonna increase, I think, as the year goes on. And you also have to remember the Ravens in second and third round, they got a few more receivers to help Lamar Jackson out, and really can't complain. Now the Arizona Cardinals, they're some of their positions in the draft weren't great, but they were able to get some absolute steals. They were able to get Isaiah Simmons, who probably should have won 4 picks ahead at least. They picked the best talent off the board for their first round pick, and they were able to wait up. They've had offensive line issues the past couple of years, and they were able to get Josh Jones, somebody who some were projecting on the first round. They were able to snag him in the third.
No, I think they got a lot of value out of that draft, and even though they didn't even have a second round pick. So yeah. I agree, and they seem to. And then they also got Lucky Fotu, who their interior, their D line needed some replacement players. They have not been good on the interior of the D line. Like you said, they got Isaiah Simmons help build out that defense. I agree. I like the Cardinals a lot, especially when you include the fact that they got DeAndre Hopkins as part of that deal. Rich or Colby actually, because you seem to be the expert out of the duo. Do you agree with both those guys? You want to contribute to the teams that they had, or you want to just jump to your own 2 teams?
Well, actually, one of my 2 was Arizona. I liked all of what was said before with Simmons and Jones, but also I think they got some good value with Weaver and Benjamin in the late rounds. Weaver was a productive linebacker, and Benjamin, I thought he would be a 3rd round pick, but he went 7th. My other team was the Broncos, and I know that's somewhat of people have different opinions on that one. But I like the fact that they were just surrounding Drew Lock with weapons offensively to pair with Cortland Sutton. Jerry Jeudy, I think, was a steal at 15, and KJ Hamler is going to be the guy in the slot. And they got good protection with Cushenberry as well, so I think the Broncos had a good draft.
No, I totally agree with you on the Broncos. That was one of my favorites as well, because they, like you said, they doubled up on receiver. You got Jerry Jeudy, great route runner. You got Hamler, good speed guy, right? One of the fastest guys in the draft. Lloyd Cushenberry. They also got Netani Mutai. So both interior O linemen, very similar. They're both very good in gap power scheme. You got Mutai fell because he had injury issues, but he was probably one of the best interior O linemen in the draft. Then they also got Albert O, the tight end that actually has played with Drew Lock back in college, and they also got the cornerback in the 3rd round.
Ojemudia.
Yeah. Thank you for saying it, because I would have butchered the name. So no, I did. I liked their draft a lot, and even the other guys who they had were interesting upside picks. So I agree with you 100%. Shane, do you have any of them that you're going to contribute to, or do you have a personal two that you have that aren't in the group, or even if you wanted to talk about some of the teams that have already been talked about?
I'll use two personal ones just to provide diversity in the chat. But like I said, Ravens one, as well as the J.K. Dobbins pick, was my favorite pick of the whole draft. Not only because they got him later, and he was my favorite running back, but like the Ravens are like an analytics-driven team, and J.K. Dobbins had the most rushing yards out of shotgun in all of college football, which is what Baltimore runs all of it out of. So I thought that was a great pick. But my two favorites, I'm going to start with the Bills. And they didn't even have a first-round draft pick, which is one reason, and they still just killed it. They were able to get Zach Moss in the third round, who's a big-bodied running back, one of the top 5 running backs in this draft. And he doesn't even have to be like a workhorse. It's going to take a lot of load off of Singletary and provide a complementary to a run-driven team. And their first pick was Epinesa, who they got way later than he should have gone. He was projected to go to the first round in a lot of mocks, and that makes their defense even better. And then later on in the draft, they were able to get the receiver out of UCF. So now they finally have a big-bodied receiver to help, track down the deep ball and not just a speed threat like John Brown. And then my other favorite is the Vikings. I thought the Vikings, they had a low-key one of the best drafts in recent memory. They lost Stephon Diggs in the trade to Buffalo, but they got a first-round pick out of it that they used on Justin Jefferson out of LSU to immediately replace Diggs. And they got him because the Eagles dropped the ball and decided to take Rigger instead. And then with their other pick, they got Gladney from TCU to replace Xavier Rhodes. And then they did even better on day 3 by getting like James Lynch, the defensive tackle out of Baylor, and then Troy Dye, the linebacker out of Oregon. I thought they filled a lot of positions in need. And they got good players at good value, and they have all this talent on rookie contracts, so to really help their cap situation as well.
No, those two were very good teams in the draft this year. I felt like a lot of teams did really well in the draft this year. It was I think it's when you have this much depth, and then you didn't have the going to pro days, the misinformation out there, people going ahead and being like, "Yo, dude, I really like X tackle who really sucks, Austin Jackson." But like in reality, like okay, so Buffalo, you're right. Like they had a great draft. Not only that, but I actually kind of like the fact that they picked up Fromm in the on day 3. You don't know what's gonna. Josh Allen, they seem to be high on, but Josh Allen historically has had accuracy issues. Also, has historically been injured. So now you got a cheap guy on a guy on a cheap contract who might turn up being like again, maybe he ends up being AJ McCarron, right? Like we saw that a few years ago. But this was a guy people were talking about a couple years ago in the first round, so maybe Jake Fromm becomes a high-end backup, a trade chip down the line. And then you're right. Dude, Vikings, by the way, Vikings had a ton of picks. I think they picked 13 players, and they got picks for next year. 15 players. Dear God. Yo, Vikings, like they were just but they needed to fill out the depth, right? They lost all those corners. They lost Mackenzie Alexander, Trey Waynes, Xavier Rhodes. Well, they cut Xavier Rhodes. And then they had and even the pass rusher DNs, they lost Everson Griffin, Linval Joseph, and then you're right, they needed to replace Diggs, and they did a pretty good job on that. I disagree with you on Rager though. I like Rager. I think it's just different of opinion of what you particularly look for in a receiver, and not that I dislike Justin Jefferson. I think there's a very good value to what he does. I think I felt skill set wise he was very similar to Thielen, but again Thielen's been good. I'm more of the belief of like building your team like a basketball team where it's like, hey, you get a speed guy, you get a good route runner, you get a guy who's a good X. Now maybe there wasn't a guy there that they believed in outside of Jefferson. They just knew the translation was going to be good. But I agree. I think Vikings did very well. Anybody else want to contribute to any of the teams that they didn't get to talk about? Chris?
I think a sneaky good draft was Jacksonville.
Yeah, I was just about to say that.
Dude, Jacksonville did really good. I liked their, especially their first 3 picks. I like Laviska Shenault, getting him in the second round. You get a guy who's a good run after catch receiver. C.J. Henderson, who again, if they're in a rebuild mode, give him some time to, he was a good man corner, give him some time to learn the position a little bit more. Kayvon Chason, I know a lot of people were very high on him, and he, again, when you're getting that kind of a pass rusher, it's a high upside guy, but good enough. Like there's a good projection for him. I liked their draft as well.
Barch in the 4th round.
Ben Barch is really good.
Shaquille Quarterman in the 4th round, who I like as linebacker out of Miami. So they had a sneaky good draft. The Jaguars.
Yeah, I agree. Any other drafts you guys want to comment on, or do you guys want to move to drafts you didn't like?
I thought Cleveland had a good first 2 days.
I liked Cleveland's day 3 too.
Yeah, Cleveland had a solid draft.
Yeah.
Dude, I loved Cleveland's draft, and as a Cleveland Browns fan, I didn't want to brag on it, but dude, I like the fact they got Jedrick Wills and Delpit. They fixed, the offensive line. They fixed their free safety issue. Delpit, you can hide the tackling deficiencies, and also he tackled pretty well his first year coming out when he blew up the whole college football ethos, if you will. And then I loved Jordan Elliott, good 3-tech D tackle out of Missouri. And then I wasn't a big fan of the linebacker they picked at the 3rd round, but again, at this point they need to fix their line. They're throwing cheap darts at linebacker, so it was like, hey, this is about where a lot of the good linebackers already went off the board. There probably was some other guys they could have went for at that spot, but it's a end of the day 2 picks. I liked day 3 for them. I liked Donovan Peoples-Jones as a 6th rounder.
Yes, I like that pick.
I liked Bryant out of FIU, Florida. Is it Florida Atlantic he came out of?
Yeah.
Or Florida International? I liked him. Good tight end. He's more of a developmental guy, and again, it's kind of more of your 3rd tight end. But they like running 2 and 3 tight end sets. You have 2 more.
He's the guy that won the Mackey Award, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right, and you add him with the tight ends they have, and now you create mismatches with multiple tight ends on the field, like obviously the Patriots did years ago. The Ravens did the last few years with having a lot of tight ends. You can really create some interesting mismatches when you have different tight ends like that.
Well, even the Eagles did that last year. They had that was the only way they were able to create some offense. They had Dallas Goedert and they had Zach Ertz. Yeah. So, because they weren't able to get a lot, they lost all the speed on the offense. That's why, dude, they went 3 fast receivers in this draft. They went 1 on day 1, and they went 2 on day 3. I thought that was one of the redeeming qualities of the Eagles. Plus, they went a couple of good O-linemen towards the end of the draft, Prince Tega and Jack Driscoll. I kind of like both those guys from Auburn. Probably one of them's going to kick into guard, though. Probably Jack Driscoll has more of a guard build and athleticism to him. Oh, go ahead, Colby.
Yeah, no. Speaking as an Eagles fan, I read a bit about this stuff. Driscoll, I read, was working on some center as well. So with Jason Kelsey coming back for probably his last year, seeing as he had to make the announcement that he was not retiring, leads you to believe he's going to retire next year. I think they might be grooming him to replace him.
That's true too. Offensive line, again, that's that's one of the things I love about the Eagles, the Seahawks, and the Patriots is you can see sometimes the team building mentality that they're putting into it. With the Eagles, it's offensive line and defensive line being ahead of the curve instead of behind the curve. Any last comments on any teams before we move on to the teams that we didn't like?
Cincinnati had a good draft. I'll just put it that way. I'll just say that Cincinnati had a good draft.
I agree. I liked. Everybody likes Joe Burrow, unless you're Kris. Did you like Joe Burrow? I can't remember. I know you didn't like quarterbacks.
No, I don't think he's the number 1 pick. But we overdraft quarterbacks like all hell. I didn't think there was any real good quarterback.
All right. But I agree with Shane. I thought they had a really good draft. I might have went different on receiver, but again, I felt like the difference between T. Higgins and some other guys, it's about a scheme fit. And honestly, I felt like they could have used another good real route runner. I thought they could have went KJ Hamler there. But they already have a speed guy on the roster. But I feel like that's one of those positions you can never be too little on speed. But I liked the Bengals a bit. Plus, I just felt like they should have went Josh Jones at some point. Like he fell Arizona in the 3rd round. I felt like that was the team that, hey, you've had O-line issues for the last 3 years since basically Andrew Whitworth left you for dust and you went to the LA Rams. So that's the one issue I had with their draft. But I felt like they did pretty good otherwise. So let's get to the losers, everybody. Who Kris, we'll start you off. Who's your big losers of the draft, man?
These 2 teams, the only way to say about their draft is uninspired. And that's Houston and Pittsburgh.
Yeah, Pittsburgh sucked.
Houston's draft is like,
Yeah.
Blacklock's okay. Jonathan Grenard's developmental. Charlie Heck, the offensive lineman they got in the 4th round, more developmental. Pittsburgh's draft, Claypool's all right. Highsmith's coming out of a small school. Anthony McFarland Jr., the running back, just uninspired, I think, if I'm a fan of either of those teams. I mean, Bill O'Brien's just proving his worth as one of the worst GMs in the history of modern American football.
Oh yeah, don't get. I feel like everybody likes to pile on Bill O'Brien. I feel bad, but you're right. He had a kind of uninspiring draft. What was that, Shane?
He's a stooge.
Yeah.
I think Shane's gonna start printing out shirts that say Bill O'Brien's a stooge, if they don't already exist.
The only real word I could come up with is just uninspiring. I don't know if you're a fan of either one of those teams. Are you excited about any one of these players? If you're a Pittsburgh Steelers fan, are you excited about Chase Claypool? Okay, he's a nice player, but I don't know. Uninspired.
Not
given where they took him.
Pick you have in the draft.
That's my point. Yes, Shane, that's my point.
And it's weird because we've seen that. Actually, a lot of the teams that didn't have a first-round pick, they kind of whiffed on their first pick, didn't they? Outside of Buffalo. There was the Texans, the Steelers, LA Rams. I was not a big fan of the LA Rams draft, to be honest.
The Bears trading up to get their 10th tight end on the roster.
Yes.
That's not a joke, people.
Yeah, that's pretty bad. That was it. Yeah, that was probably another bad one. Yeah, it feels like all the ones who didn't have a first-round pick, they went and reached, but they reached for guys who probably weren't that good. So those are your two. Harry, what were yours?
Well, I was I'm not going to say this to sound biased, but I'm going my 2 division rivals, Miami and New England.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Any reason why?
Because, it's we took, like I said, I've been vocal about this. Kris has been vocal about this. I think Tua Tagovailoa, he's going to be a bust. You could just, you just have him just sit on the, you could have just waited and maybe gotten a guy like Jalen Hurts. He could have had him sit on the bench behind Brian Fitzpatrick. And if he doesn't work, Dolphins are not going to be good right away, even if they drafted well. So maybe tank for somebody better next year, like Trevor Lawrence or Justin Fields. And it's they spent the past year or so acquiring draft picks, and they whiffed on a bunch of them. Austin Jackson, there's a guy who should not have went in the first round. And New England, I just as Kris said about Pittsburgh and Houston, just uninspiring. They traded out of the first round. They're going through a transition period, losing Brady and Gronk. So this is probably a draft they needed to have a few hits on. A lot of people were talking about that maybe getting Jake Fromm. But instead of taking him, they took a kicker. They were the first team to take a kicker and then let Jake Fromm fall to their division rivals, the Buffalo Bills.
Kicker.
Yeah, I heard about it.
I heard about that.
Well, he's going to sell a lot of jerseys in Boston.
Yeah, there you go. I kind of I definitely agree with the Texans. Miami, I feel more mixed about because I felt like they had some good picks and some mixed picks. I felt like they were more the middling draft where it's I felt like you could have done better. I feel like that guy who was if I was talking to Miami, I'm like, dude, you guys just could have done so much better. It's they're dating a 6 and they can get a 10. You can get a 10, just work out, go hang out, go to the bar, talk to chicks. I don't know. Miami, I felt weird because I liked Tua. I actually didn't hate the corner, Igbenogany, that they picked up. Curtis Weaver, who they got on day 3, I kind of liked. Raekwon Davis, I thought was a little high where they picked him, but overall, I didn't hate the pick. I thought he was going to be a good player. You're right. I don't like Austin Jackson, but when you look at it in the total of their draft, I felt like they could have. I agree. I kind of didn't like all of it, but I think there was bits and pieces. Colby, what's your opinion, man? What any of those teams that you don't like, or any teams particular you're going to bring up?
I had the Patriots as well, just because you lost Tom Brady. How are you not taking quarterback at least in the late rounds? They picked up the Louisiana Tech guy and as an undrafted free agent. That's not going to do it. And Jarrett Stidham's not your future quarterback. Beyond that, I had the Seahawks just because I did a mock draft before the draft, and I had them taking Epinesa. They had 2 shots at him. They traded up before the Bills, and they took a different edge rusher. How do you not
I do remember this.
You let him fall to the Bills. And besides that, I don't think they had a bad draft, but I think that's just a bad move. Twice.
Yeah, their first 2 picks I was not a big fan of. The Seahawks, they went with Jordan Brooks in the first round, which, listen, again, linebacker is kind of a weird position. It's a linebacker and safety. But you took him before Patrick Queen, who I felt like no matter what is going to probably be like, everybody's talking about the Ravens draft and everybody's a big fan of the Ravens draft. I thought Patrick Queen was going to be like a much better player than Brooks. Now Brooks, I think, has maybe a little bit better in the run game. But still, I don't know. I felt like that was like if you're looking for a guy who, like, when you're playing cover 3 zone, don't you want that linebacker who's going to be able to play good zone coverage? The only thing is, I never count Seattle out, right? They always seem to do this shit, and then they still, because they're riding the back of Russell Wilson, they take him like all the way to the playoffs, and now it's just been like. They keep pretending they can rebuild the Legion of Boom, that defensive line, that great cornerback core, the safeties, and they do some parts of it well, and they do somehow win a lot of games, like every few years, except for like the 1 year I think they like 2 years ago or whatever it was. They just seem to constantly be on the playoff contention track every year. So I don't know. I don't know what to do with the Seahawks ever. Shane, what's a couple of teams that you didn't like, man?
The 3 I had on my list, the Seahawks and Steelers were on that list. They pretty much said all the reasons. The Seahawks had need at edge and secondary, and they just didn't take the best value picks when they had them. But my absolute least favorite draft was Chicago. They had no first round picks. Then they trade up to take a tight end when they already have 9 on the roster. Then they take Johnson out of Utah, which is the only pick they like. They had no pick in round 3 or 4, and then in round 5 and 7, they had 5 picks, and only one of them was a player out of a Power 5 conference. Which, if you're not familiar with college football, that's the SEC, ACC, Big 12, Big 10, and Pac-12. Everybody came from a small school, and some of them didn't even fit positions in need. So they had the worst draft out of all 32 teams. Ryan Pace he's another stooge.
Yeah, they could have used some defensive line help. Didn't draft any of that. Yeah, it was a bad draft. New England. I don't know if you guys read this article or saw this today. New England said that their design was to come out of this draft with a quarterback. So apparently they had someone in mind that they wanted to get, and that person got chosen before they could pick them, because their design was to come out of this draft with a specific quarterback.
I mean, even then, I feel like you have to take one. Like, just try to. You had a couple cracks at Fromm. Fromm seems like a Brady type player coming out of college, and I mean, unless they're tanking for Trevor, which I don't think they're going to do that because it's Belichick. And Belichick wants to win. That's a bad move.
Like I said, they obviously had one guy in mind, and they got outmaneuvered for it. They had one guy in mind in a specific round, probably, and they.
Who was that guy? Who do you think the guy was?
There's an article saying that their design was to come out of this draft with a quarterback.
Yeah, but who would you think it was?
I don't know. Maybe Eason.
I doubt that's even true.
I think it's coming from a quote from Bill Belichick, and what the quote was is that they said, "Oh, you didn't come out of this draft with a quarterback." He says that wasn't by design. So with the quote's a little bit mixed. It doesn't mean that they necessarily had a particular quarterback, but that they had guys set in certain rounds. Like they might have been willing to take Fromm in round 6 or round 5, but they they had certain grades on guys they didn't shoot at him. Maybe they were going to take Jordan Love in round 2 or something. So maybe they had different because that's Belichick. As he goes by his board, if there's nobody there, he'll trade down. So that's why I'm like, I always feel weird. Again, that's another team, Patriots. I never count them out. They're always weird drafting, but they always seem to get like weird good values. Like they got Josh Uche. I thought that was a good pickup. So they had a couple of guys. You're right. Everybody's going to complain about the quarterback. They didn't go out and get a quarterback. The 2 that I had that I didn't like the Rams, man, because the 2 best players they picked were like were literally the things that they were already tied to, right? You got like they were like it was part of like releases that they made or trades they made in the offseason, but not even similar players. So Cam Akers, right, round 2. Did you really you spent a first-round pick on you spent a third-round pick on a running back last year in Darrell Henderson. You gave Malcolm Brown an extension. You just cut Todd Gurley and you're paying him $7 million to go play or $5 million to go play on the Atlanta Falcons. Then you go ahead and draft Van Jefferson, who I like Van Jefferson, but like he's like the discount version of actually the guy who shares his last name, Justin Jefferson. It's like if you couldn't get up in the air, if Justin Jefferson was only just a good route runner as a slot guy and didn't have some of the, they both have good hands, but again, like I think I would trust Justin Jefferson more in a 50-50 ball situation. I didn't understand their draft. They didn't go at O-lineman. We were saying the whole night during the live stream, what are you doing here? Like you're gonna lose Whitworth in a year. I know you guys drafted a couple of O-line, but like the first 2 rounds, like especially because they had a couple of extra, it just didn't make sense. They had a couple of extra picks on day 2. They didn't spend nearly enough capital on offensive line, and then while Washington drafted, what? Oh, Sadiq Charles. Oh, no, Sadiq Charles was Washington. But that's why I'm bringing up Washington. So Washington went Chase Young for second overall. Totally like that. Totally get the pick. Like the player. I didn't like any of the rest of their draft. It was they got 1 tackle in the 4th round, Sadiq Charles. Again, another team that were saying, wait, they could have taken Josh Jones. They could have went for this guy. And it felt like they didn't try to get more picks. They took forever to trade Trent Williams, so they lost out on the value there. By the way, Trent Williams was traded.
They traded him for a 5th.
Exactly. A 5th and a 3rd next year. Dude, what the hell? By the way, that's where I feel like Miami failed. Miami could have gotten great value. Listen, and nobody be talking about Austin Jackson right now if Miami traded for Trent Williams, right? And it was supposed to be like, hey, Austin, you're going to get a stopgap year. We're getting Trent Williams, or we'll play you at guard for right now, or play you at right tackle, or we'll play you at left tackle, switch Trent to the other side because you feel like you can protect him better. But that's hard. When you're in your 30s, it's hard to relearn, the side sets. Like it's when you're earlier, when you're younger and you're like 20s, they'll switch you to different sides. But like you saw with Donald Penn switched from the left side to the right side in his mid 30s, and he did not play well. He went back to the left side, played much better. So yeah, those were the 2 I did not care for. Any of the ones that were mentioned that like you guys wanted to chip in on?
I mean, just for the Redskins, besides the Chase Young pick, I did like their 2 skill position picks. I liked Gibson and Gandy Golden, just because they're both athletic and they're both fast. Beyond, like, I wanted Gandy Golden for the Eagles, but beyond that, yeah, no, I don't like the draft.
And again, I think part of my dislike for them is their delay in getting any kind of compensation for Trent Williams, because again, you could have utilized that in this draft to set your team up for the future. Now you got a 5th rounder this year and a 3rd rounder next year, which good. You got a 3rd rounder for one of the best tackles in the NFL, and you kind of wasted the value there. So those are the main ones I feel like. Any last thoughts on the ones we didn't like so far before we get into particular picks?
No.
No, it doesn't look like it. All right, so it was a fun draft. It was a great draft, but like let's each give our our favorite day 1 pick and least favorite day 1 pick. And we'll go backwards in order. We'll go Shane. Who was your favorite day 1 pick this weekend?
CeeDee Lamb.
CeeDee Lamb?
He was
falling to 17.
Yeah, and a team that didn't necessarily need him. He's more of a luxury for that offense, but he was my number 1 wide receiver in the draft as well as most people's, and you get him at 17. It's just a great pick by Jerry Jones.
I agree. Colby, what was one of your favorite picks on day 1?
I had Tristan Wirfs just because I had him as the best overall tackle. I had him go to the Giants at 4, but for him to fall to 13 and protect Tom Brady they don't have to worry about it. It's a perfect pick.
No, I agree. I liked Tristan Wirfs as well. Good feet. I didn't have him as the best tackle, but I do like it. I thought he was, I thought the top 3 tackles in this class were amazing. Like any one of them could have probably been a good argument for top tackle. Very athletic guy, ran a 4.85 in the 40. I agree. I thought that was a good pick. I thought it was weird that San Francisco managed to swindle them out of a 4th round pick to come up 1 spot. I don't know how they do it. He has pictures of some of these GMs. It's either Shanahan or or Lynch, but one of them has pictures of some of these guys like naked somewhere, or they learn how to hack their phones. We're gonna release this porn tape that you made with your significant other. If you don't, that's what they do. They do porn tapes, right?
I got a theory. I got a theory as to how they got that trade through. I think that maybe they may have leaked it to the Bucs that they were losing Staley and that they were going to take a tackle, so they convinced them that they needed to jump ahead.
Look at you, man, with the real storyline there. That's right. Joe Staley retired. Dude, you caught me off guard. I totally forgot about that. That probably explains it. Where they were like, either they said to you, "Listen, we're going to probably take the tackle, or we'll save the effort for ourselves." And we're already talking to the Washington. The other option I thought is maybe somebody else wanted to come up for a different player. And they were saying to Tampa Bay, like, hey, we don't want to move back. We have somebody else calling up. We think they're coming up for a tackle. We know you want a tackle. What if we move back one? And then, but by the way, they didn't even use that extra pick, by the way. They ended up trading it to get back up to take Brandon Ayuk.
Hey, go Sun Devils. Forks up. That's what's up.
Harry, what was one of your least favorite drafts?
What
was one of your favorite picks? I'm sorry, favorite picks on day one.
Favorite picks? I'm probably gonna have to go either Isaiah Simmons or I'm probably gonna have to sell in St. Patrick Queen. I know I've been saying that a bunch, but probably my favorite for day one pick, Patrick Queen.
I liked Patrick Queen. I thought that. Well, I hate that he went to a team that my team plays against, but I thought, like I was saying, I hate that the Ravens had such a good draft. There's a little bit of hope there in my heart, but there's because of the positional values of some of the guys. But still, like Patrick Queen was a great pick. I thought he was definitely outside of Isaiah Simmons, probably one of the top linebackers in the class. Rich, did you have a particular one that you liked? I kind of skipped over you. I'll let your son talk. Yeah, sorry. I haven't
been this unprepared for something since 8th grade history class, so I will let Kobe do the talking for me.
There you go. It's like that's a great. Imagine like you have to have your son in 8th grade though, and be like, "Yo, dude," like he comes back in time. It's like, dude, I need you to go back in time, help me not fail a history test or something.
Actually, I would kill for that. Actually, yes.
All right, Kris, what was one of your favorite day one picks?
I was gonna go with Queen, but we've talked about him a lot, and that was Harry's. And the more I read about it, and the more I watched some things, and I saw an interview with Andy Reid. Man, I love that Clyde Edwards-Helaire pick.
Yeah, that's a good pick.
Like, I think they are just gonna. I mean, they're gonna take their offense to an even different level with someone like that, with the versatility of Edwards-Helaire, especially him being able to catch the ball out of the backfield. Man, they're gonna set records on top of records that they've already set.
You know what? That pick, again, I think we had to talk about it on draft night. I feel mixed on that pick. Like, on the one end, I love the player. On the other end, did they get the value out of the pick? I think if you look at his pass catching, and it's almost like they're playing 5 wide on the field every down, that's the aspect of it I really like. I know there's some analytics out there that say passes to running backs aren't as valuable, but that also might be, when you have to look at it with basically with the eyes of, is it because of the types of routes that they're running? Because you can run a layer in a totally different setup than you can say throwing to Nick Chubb out of the backfield or throwing to.
It's one of those things, Woj, where it's not just passes running back; it's the threat of the pass to a running back like that.
Yeah. Because
then a linebacker, someone has to come up in his zone, and then Kelsey fits in behind. It's just like. I know Andrew's a big baseball guy, right? When you have Giancarlo Stanton batting behind Aaron Judge, there's a value to that, even if Stanton's not hitting home runs or not hitting well.
And that's already an offense. That's already an offense. You can't double team anyone.
Right.
If you double team anyone, there's going to be a huge mismatch somewhere else on the field.
No disagreement there. And I like the player, and I think he went to the perfect place to go. So, and if there's anybody I'm not going to second guess, this is why they were not on my least favorite list. I'm not going to second guess Andy Reid, right? Andy Reid, Bill Belichick, Pete Carroll, those guys, they seem to just keep doing it right. And even when they don't, they just seem to keep doing it right somehow, even when you don't think they're doing it right. Mm-hmm. So what was some of your least favorite picks on day one? Shane, what was your least favorite pick on day one?
So, we're leaving the Packers off limits, right?
We could talk Jordan Love. I meant for the teams when we were talking the teams. I felt like that was so. We didn't even talk about him yet. We're going to talk about at the end of this segment. where you're kind of leading into it. But yeah, go ahead and talk Jordan Love. It's fine. Or if you want to bring up another one you didn't like.
Yeah, let's just leave the Packers off limits in general. And by the way, just now that I'm thinking about it, I think Jordan Love was the quarterback the Patriots wanted because the Packers up to get him, and then very next, like New England was supposed to have the next pick, and then they just traded out of the first round. So
that's very possible. I mean, that would sound exactly what like Baltimore did a couple years ago, where they kept on trading down, and they still got Lamar Jackson with their second first-round pick.
But my least day one pick was Damon Arnett from the Las Vegas Raiders at 19.
Yeah.
Because secondary is a huge need for them. You still had guys like Jeff Gladney, Fulton from LSU, Diggs from Alabama. All those guys were on the board. And they take Damon Arnett, who wasn't even the number one corner on his team in college at Ohio State, and he only runs a 4.56 40. So, and he gets burnt a lot in college, and when he does, he holds. So he was heavily penalized. So, like, what? And it's not even a normal Raiders pick because they screwed that up with their first pick because they took the fastest wide receiver. So then with their second pick, they're like, okay, let's do the opposite and take the slowest defensive back. Mike Mayock pisses me off, man.
Maybe their plan was to be like start like releasing video of practice of Ruggs going against Damon Arnett, and he's just blowing by him every time, and everybody's going, "Shit, we got to cover Ruggs!" And then they start throwing it to Tyrell Williams and Waller and Josh Jacobs.
Well, yeah, because Derek Carr can't throw downfield.
I disagree with that a little bit. He threw a couple of good deep balls last year to Tyrell Williams, and Tyrell Williams broke his foot. But generally speaking, he's not known for that. What was that?
Yeah, when you said a couple, that literally only two. That's it.
Yeah, I didn't like the Damon Arnett pick either. Anybody else here want to input on the Damon Arnett pick, or any other particular insight on that?
I mean, Arnett was my choice too, but just because you also drafted a slot corner later in the round, later in the draft with Robertson, who was a much better value at the pick you got him at. So it's redundancy. You could
the whole draft.
All right, guys, we got another guy coming in. He was here on the live cast the other night. Please welcome in Kev, DJ Intence. It might take a minute for him to get in. But yeah, so Damon Arnett. Well, the weird thing with Damon Arnett is he's 24 too. He's much older. Colby, what's one of the guys that you didn't care much for in the draft that went on day one?
Well, and welcome Arnett, on. I had the other early corner beside that I think went a little too early with AJ Terrell.
Gotcha.
Terrell was a second or third rounder. You could have gotten Fulton. You could have gotten Jalen Johnson. Instead, you go with the guy who got destroyed by Jamar Chase in the championship. And I think that there are much better picks available if you need to go corner there.
Well, I thought he held up okay with Jamar Chase. He just wasn't good at the catch point with him, which unfortunately, if you're able to stay in phase with somebody, but you can't stop him from catching the ball, you're not that great of a corner. He's probably more of a round 2 corner.
And if you're going to be in a league with Michael Thomas, in a division with Michael Thomas.
Yeah, exactly. And not only that, but with AJ Terrell, there's some rumors out there that maybe that was the pick that the Raiders wanted to do, that they wanted to go for AJ Terrell. And then they missed out on him, and they got stuck with Damon Arnett, who's their corner 2 on their board or something. Like they freaked out, and they went, "Shit! I didn't realize this was my time. I'm on the clock."
Yeah, of course they would take Terrell because he's from Clemson. That was 80% of their draft was Clemson.
Yep, the Clemson.
I love these Clemson guys. I'll tell you what.
Anyway, you guys, welcome on Kev, aka Mr. DJ Intence. How's it going, Kev?
What's up, guys? How y'all doing, man?
Doing good, Kev. How's it going?
Not much. I just wrapped up my own pod. It was a few minutes ago. I had to recording for somebody for another show, so busy over here on my end. What's going on?
Great. It's great having you. We're talking about our favorite and least favorite picks on day one. I'll give you a minute to kind of acclimate. We're gonna go to Harry next. We were just talking about AJ Terrell and Damon Arnett as least favorite day one picks. By the way, Kev, it's also Andrew, Rich, and Colby are in the other corner on there. They're the other screen.
How's it going?
Hey,
what's going on?
So Harry, what was one of your least favorite picks on day one?
My least favorite pick on day one by far were Chargers taking Justin Herbert. I said, like I've been a big fan of Tyrod Taylor, like since he was in Buffalo. I know he's not going to be the quarterback for the future, but and also the Chargers, they had other needs they could have addressed. They could have addressed the O-line. You still had Becton on. You still had Tristan Wirfs. He was still available. And also you had Isaiah Simmons, who a lot of people consider to be the second best player on the draft. He was still on the board, and he really could have helped up that defense. But and again, I don't think Justin Herbert's going to be that good. I think I said numerous times, I think Jalen Hurts, who was taken the second round, is going to be better. So if you're going to go with the wrong position, very least you could have done is get a better guy. But yeah, I think I'm going to stick with Chargers taking Herbert.
Yeah, Herbert seems to be a very mixed pick amongst people. I know there's probably somebody else in the panel who's not a big fan of that. And I think there's an argument to be made that if you think there's a quarterback who has the opportunity to be a top 10 quarterback and you get him on a cheap rookie deal, you could build the team around him. But and I know, Kris, you probably disagree with me on that. You probably like the idea of going with Herbert, or dislike the idea of going with Herbert.
Yeah, my worst pick in the first day was all 4 quarterbacks.
Well, there you go. All 4 quarterbacks, huh?
I think not Burrow, the other 3, I think will win a combined less than 25 games in their NFL careers.
Wow.
Woo.
Total.
Woo. Collectively.
It's going to win about 4 games.
Ooh.
Damn. Anybody want to provide a contrarian take to Mr. DiBlasio or Harry's take here? Colby or Shane or Kev? Or
I'm a quarterback kind of guy, so I disagree. I want them all to do really well. I think Herbert was actually a pretty good pick. I think he fits much better in Los Angeles than he would have in Miami, which is where I had him going. I had the Chargers jumping to get Tua, which was wrong. But I think that Herbert is the guy the Chargers wanted for like months, and I like him for his arm talent.
Yeah, I definitely don't agree with the not taking quarterbacks at all in round 1. I think I understand why people.
Quarterbacks in round 1.
You just think all 4 of these guys?
I just think this crop of quarterbacks was not definitely. I mean, quarterbacks are always going to get overdrafted in the NFL. That's the way it goes. So I think Burrow was, if you drafted him in the correct spot, it would be mid-first round, and the other 3 would be end of the first round or second. Well, Tua, I don't think should be drafted. I'm the biggest anti-Tua guy, which we've gone over 1 million times. But Herbert and Love could be late first round, early second round guys, maybe with Hurts, in that area. But
if Burrow wasn't from Ohio, would you think the Bengals would have traded that pick?
Yes.
No, that was strictly off of his. No. It was off of his play. It had nothing to do with him being from Ohio. A couple years ago, the Browns had the number 1 overall pick. They didn't take Mitch Trubisky because he was from Ohio.
But Burrow's he was the overall consensus first pick. But the Bengals, they could have gotten a fortune for that pick. I think they just couldn't trade him because he was from Ohio.
I also think it's partially from the owner's kind of very old school mentality. They have a very small scouting staff, so he's kind of like that guy who's like, listen, just take the best guy available. They don't really make those big trades. They're not playing into analytics. That's actually probably the team, because they're so cheap there. They probably should invest more in analytics, but
they don't even have an indoor training facility. I'm not even kidding. They play in fucking Cincinnati, and they have no indoor training facility.
And it's cold in Cincinnati.
Arizona State has that, and it never snows.
I actually always wonder why the southern places have more domes.
It's fucking hot. Because it's fucking hot.
Yeah.
I filmed football practice at the University of South Carolina for 9 years. It's fucking hot.
So, Kev, we did a rundown of favorite and least favorite picks from day 1. What was one of your favorite picks and one of your least favorite picks?
My favorite pick, and it might sound, kind of crazy. I thought that the Cowboys getting CD Lamb at 17, for him to fall there, that's probably my favorite pick that they got.
Yeah, that one was mentioned.
Yeah, and then my least favorite pick and I'm gonna stick to it, man. Yo, the Packers. Come on. Like,
well, we're gonna get into the
hello?
Packers at the end of this. I understand both those picks very well. So any of the
probably my second least favorite was Atlanta again, AJ Terrell. That probably was like, you know.
Yeah, there's that one also. It seems like there's been a little bit of mixed feelings on, especially because again, it felt like a little bit of a reach. He's more of a day 2 guy. And like Colby said, that beating he took, in the beginning he looks like he was holding pretty well against Jamar Chase, which Jamar Chase is probably going to be an elite receiver in the NFL when he comes out. Now, maybe not right away, but I kind of agree with what Colby says. Yeah. So any of the picks that were mentioned so far that you guys that were mentioned as least favorite day 1 picks that you guys all kind of want to like air any kind of thoughts on until we move to day 2, or should we just move to day 2? Yeah, let's move to day 2. So yeah, we're gonna go ahead and move to day 2. Let's do Shane. What was your favorite pick from day 2?
AJ Epinesa.
Oh, to the Bills, yeah. He was a good defensive end.
Yeah, and they're one of their strong points. They're a defense-first team and a run-first conservative offense, and they just made the best side of their ball even better. And they got him later than pretty much what he should have gone. So I was a big fan.
Yeah, he was initially a top 15 pick, at least as the rumors went. And I guess worries about his athleticism, if it's going to translate, what position he's going to play in the NFL. McDermott doesn't worry about that. McDermott's one of the better head coaches. If he sees somebody he likes, he will find the way to make you work. He's just again, he's one of those coaches I really like from afar. There was a point where he might have almost been the Browns head coach. That didn't happen.
Well, him and their GM Bean also have a very, very, very good communicative working relationship as well. It's like that's one of the few teams that's like where the GM and the head coach kind of see eye to eye.
Exactly. Yeah, like Bean was McDermott was part of the reason why Bean got hired there as the GM. And yeah, they're totally in lockstep, totally in sync. They know what they want to do. And they have a vision, and they get the best. They get the best and the most out of their guys. They got a lot of high-end guys with good upside, and AJ Epinesa was a guy who had a lot of good production in college, who they probably think they can get more production out of. Anybody agree with the AJ Epinesa pick?
Yeah, that was mine too.
That was pretty nice. I think for me was the Giants getting Xavier McKinney. Getting a top-tier player.
Yeah, that's a good pick.
That was a really good pick to steal that guy. I like him, too. So,
yeah, Xavier McKinney was an interesting pick. The only thing I have a problem with the Xavier McKinney pick is, I know when we were doing the live draft, Kris, who's a big Giants fan, had mentioned that he thought they were going to go AJ Epinesa because they needed pass rushers, right? And he had fallen to them in the round 2. That's a team that seems okay at safety. But I guess it all comes down, but that's taking best player available, right? Like you're taking the best guy on your board. You think this guy can work in your defense. I just thought they were actually pretty good at safety. They got Love, who could play free safety, and he's played it pretty well when he's been playing there. They got Jabril Peppers, who's played well at strong safety. But maybe it's maybe it's a scheme thing. Maybe it's something they want to do going forward. Anybody like the Xavier McKinney pick as well?
Yes.
Yeah, most things I've read since then have said that McKinney was a consensus top 20 player on most teams' boards, most analyst boards, and you get a chance to get a top 20 talent in the second round, right? It was just best player available at the time.
Kris, what was one of your favorite day 2 picks?
I have to go with Mims for the Jets to trade back and get a good quality receiver. Man, that was it was risky what they were doing, but the risk paid off for Joe Douglas.
I agree. Go ahead.
And I was just saying, and they needed a receiver. If they didn't draft a receiver in the second round, it would have been ugly in Florida Park.
We had 3 Jets fans on the live draft episode the other night, and they were all holding holding the pearls close to their neck, going, "Please draft Mims, please draft Mims." And people thought Mims was going to go first round. He's athletic, he's good at the catch point, he's strong. He's got a little bit more to learn about playing in the NFL, but dude, they picked him at a great spot. Kev and Harry, I know you guys were big fans of the pick, but go ahead and give your thoughts on it a little bit, because I know you guys are both Jets fans. Harry, you first.
Now, like you said, we've lost Robbie Anderson, who we desperately need to replace. The past 2 years, we've all been talking about, get Darnold some protection, get Darnold some receivers, and that's exactly what we did in the first 2 rounds of the draft. And like you said before, it's a guy who should have been a first-round pick who ended up falling to late in the second round, and Mims was the only guy you could have picked at that spot.
Kev,
I
Kev, what was your thoughts on it?
Like you said, it was risky to keep trading down and keep trading down and keep trading down, but to get a first round talent and that late in the second round, you might as well go play the numbers after that. Go look at the clock, whatever numbers popped up, go play numbers immediately. Yeah, no,
I can't disagree. I like I gotta say for Joe Douglas's first draft, I definitely was a big fan. Colby, what was one of your favorite picks in the draft on day 2?
My original answer would have been Epinesa, but I'm gonna go with Trayvon Diggs, because I had him going to the Cowboys in the first round, and he fell to the second, and they still got him. The guy's been around the NFL forever with Stephon Diggs, his brother, and he went through Alabama, best training facilities ever, basically, and he's a first round talent. They got him in the second, so that's a steal for me.
Definitely. Anybody else want to opine on that?
No. Like I said earlier, Dallas to me overall had the best draft because you kept getting top tier players and just kept falling onto you, so you had to pick them. So I love what Dallas did with that pick. You lost Byron Jones, so you could put Diggs in there. Trial by fire.
No, I totally agree. They needed a corner. They needed somebody to stick outside. They have Chidobe Awuzie. They got Jordan Lewis, but they need they need a third guy. They lost Byron Jones. They have a new defensive scheme coming in, and hopefully, that Diggs was a guy who could have went round 1. So, yeah. Harry, what was one of your favorite players picked in this draft?
Probably
on day 2.
Day 2, probably Josh Jones.
Yes, of the Arizona Cardinals. He was a guy.
They got a first round quality player in the 3rd round, and they were addressing one of their needs. They had a really bad offensive line last year, and to get somebody who probably could have won in the 1st round, that's huge for them.
No, I agree. I thought that was actually why I was a big fan of Arizona's draft as well. Because again, Josh Jones was I thought probably might have even been better than Becton, and certainly was what people were thinking when people think about Ezra Cleveland, look at his athletic profile, right? They go, "Oh, he did really well at the combine. They think he's going to be this great athletic mover." Josh Jones was that in college. Now, there's a lot of questions about who he was playing against and the things that translate to the NFL. Does he do well? But I just liked watching. He's a good people mover. He was also really good in pass blocking. So with those day 2 picks, Kev, did you give yours? Yeah, you did, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So with all those day 2,
Walter, I have a question.
Yeah, Rich, what's up?
So if this was like 1993, wouldn't somebody like Jonathan Taylor be like a top 3 pick?
Yeah.
Potentially, yeah. But people learn the game. The game's adapted. It's changed. The rules have changed. The rules you're playing with as far as pass interference, so it's now more of a passing game. But also, teams have learned the value of throwing the ball, right? And also they've also learned what the value of what gets you the run, what gets the yards, right? Like, is all your running yards built off of your running back, or is it more of it built off of your offensive line, right? Like, if you don't have any offensive line to block for your running back, or you don't get good run blocking, then there's no value to a running back. But if your offensive line is run blocking really well, and you have 5 yards before you get hit before contact, it doesn't matter who you stick back there. That's why Run DMC was Darren McFadden did so well a couple years ago when he went to the Cowboys for a couple years, and then he was breaking everything, his elbow, his shoulder, dropped his phone apparently.
Can I add something to that, Woj?
Yeah.
And what you're saying about not having an offensive line, now Andrew and I are a little bit older. Andrew's a little bit older than me, but yeah, Andrew, we grew up with no, but I'm saying we grew up with running backs. We grew up with Walter Payton and Barry Sanders and Emmitt Smith and Roger Craig. As a Giants fan, Joe Morris, we grew up with those bell cow running backs. But part of it is the NFL had to adjust because the college game became so spread and pass happy that a lot of guys are not good run blockers anymore because they don't run block at all in college. Traditional run blocking, traditional downhill run blocking. The run blocking is done out of the shotgun and out of these zone blocking schemes. Okay, and the read option, you're pass blocking on the read option because you're waiting. If he pulls it and throws a pass, the linemen have to be behind the line of scrimmage. So I think it's the change in the offensive line that has helped lead to the decline of the running back.
So where would somebody like Ron Dane go today?
He wouldn't have gotten drafted today.
Ron Dane would have been an unsigned free agent.
Yeah.
But
well, honestly,
it's like since the game used to be so predominantly run heavy, that's when linebackers kept getting bigger and bigger and bigger to fill the holes.
Mm-hmm.
And once that happened, football offensive scheming is all about finding mismatches. So if you can get an athletic, quicker tight end, that's an immediate mismatch against the linebacker. So once the tight end started getting utilized more and more as a weapon, that's why now you see these linebackers that are smaller, leaner, and quicker, so they can athletically match up with the tight end as well. So that's why right now we're kind of getting a comeback with these big running backs. That's why Derrick Henry was a leading rusher, not just because he's big, but because of how often he was used, how much volume he got. That's why the San Francisco 49ers won the NFC Championship with 10 pass attempts, because they're just so run heavy. Now, granted, they're an outside scheme, not through the tackles, but it's because it's just the linebackers got smaller to match up with the tight ends. So now it's coming back around to the running backs having, a size advantage or a volume advantage, like death by 1,000 cuts type way to beat him up the middle and on the outside.
I think you're seeing
story. I've actually met Derrick Henry. He is a big guy.
Yeah.
like he is a really, really big guy. I'm like, how you run so fast at that height? Like, I don't get it. And
it's
like you said
trying to
earlier,
tackle a fucking couch, dude.
Yeah, he's like 6'5", 6'6". I'm like, whoa. And then his size, like, oh my gosh, bro. He's a big dude. But go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, I was just saying to piggyback off what Shane's saying, and then you're also seeing defenses change now. And we talked about someone like an Isaiah Simmons is a perfect example now of a guy who's kind of a hybrid safety linebacker. When you see more 2 traditional linebackers in a game and then 4 to 5 defensive backs, a lot more, especially on first and second down, when, you would only go to a nickel on third down back in the day. Now you could have 5 defensive backs on a first down play. Much more, it's much more prominent.
And part of that is schemes adapt. So everyone wants to be the next hot thing, right?
Yeah.
So, for instance, like a couple years ago, nobody was using their slot receiver. Now 11 personnel is the common thing. And now people are going back to running 12 personnel because they realize, well, if I get a mismatch with the tight end or the fullback, or I can dictate who's on the field, then you can go ahead and make your offense more explosive. This is also why, like, the outside zone run was working really well for San Francisco, because everybody would freeze on play action, so then they were telling the linebackers to stay off the line of scrimmage, and also they were getting great run blocking, and they were also getting, they were designing plays really well. And Kyle Shanahan started adding wrinkles to the game too. They were doing a lot of outside zone the first 2 years, but as guys learned the scheme, they start throwing in some gap power, some counters, and then again, you're running a lot of play action to marry the run with the pass. That's the Shanahan scheme. So now teams don't know when you're really running the ball, and it's all about, especially with Shanahan's scheme, it's the bread and butter's around that outside zone play action game. So kind of ran a little bit onto that idea, but honestly, it's a great conversation, Rich. It was a great question, and it turned into that, like, a great conversation. We were talking before, though, about favorite picks from day 2. What's some of the least favorite picks from day 2? Shane, what was one of your least favorite picks?
Before I say that, just real quick, Antoine Winfield Jr., safety out of Minnesota to Tampa Bay, was another great round 2 pick. But my least favorite day 2 pick, I already talked about, Cole Kmet, tight end out of Notre Dame. Chicago traded up to get him in one of the weakest tight end classes I've ever need. And that's an organization that has glaring weaknesses, way more pressing than the tight end position. Defensive line, offensive line, secondary, and they trade up to get a tight end when they already have 9.
Yeah, I think the time the clock is running on pace.
I can't emphasize enough how poor of a draft that whole franchise had, but that specific pick, just how poor it was.
Yeah, no, believe me, especially because it's not even the first tight end they've taken in like the last 3 years. They drafted Adam Shaheen a couple years ago. They signed Trey Burton in free agency. They seem drawn to going.
Contract. They just signed Jimmy Graham
Yeah.
They overpaid Jimmy Graham.
Yeah, a late stage Jimmy Graham, like at the end of his career, like he should really be like, retiring, putting it up, going to the retirement home. Harry, what was one of your least favorite picks from day 2?
Least favorite, Kris talked about this before. I just gotta go Claypool with the Steelers. Okay player, but went way higher than he should have. When you had like Denzel Mims was still on the board, and you picked Claypool.
Yeah, I kind of. Go ahead.
No, I was gonna say he's also like more of a tight. It's like he's got the build of a tight end. He's like, unless they maybe want to play him a tight end, but still, I don't get that pick.
Listen, good teams get better because teams start making bad decisions. I agree with you. I didn't like Claypool. I'm shocked that, and again with the Steelers, it makes me kind of rethink them a little bit, right? Because the Steelers have historically been good at drafting receivers, constantly coming up with, they were the team that found Antonio Brown, Martavis Bryant, Juju Smith-Schuster, James Washington started to come on last year, Deontay Johnson. So they always seem to find these receivers. So honestly, the fact that the Steelers took the guy really made me kind of question whether I didn't like the player. And again, I don't like the Steelers, and it made me feel better that they took a pick that I was not a big fan of. But he is athletic. He is big. They might run him. You can run him on 3 routes and kind of get something out of him. But I agree, man. It was not a pick I cared much for on day 2. If I was a fan of that team, I'd be upset. The fact that, honestly, you and me should both be happy. You got Denzel Mims out of the scenario, and I didn't have to worry about a good receiver being in my division. Kris,
Exactly.
what was one of your least favorite picks on day 2?
Duggar for the Pats. We kind of talked about the Pats draft already. I just think it was a bad pick. I know like Belichick's one of those people you don't, but I don't know. Did not like it. There were still safeties on the board.
Belichick loves those small school guys, and they pick guys out of random-ass schools and somehow turn them into something. Well, we're lucky it wasn't a safety out of Rutgers, everybody. Like, let's be real. He loves Rutgers. He traded for Mohamed Sanu last year. Like, a second-round pick. That's why they didn't have a second-round pick to begin the draft. They traded for Mohamed Sanu. But Duggar, I was...
Emmanuel Sanders.
Duggar, I kind of agree.
Winfield was still on the board at that time, which is a much better safety.
I don't disagree. But I did mention this the night of the draft, is that safety is a weird position. It's one of those things where guys will pop up and you'll be like, I don't get how this guy's going this high. He's about 2 rounds away from me. But because teams are very scheme-specific, especially with safety, probably one of the most scheme-specific positions, it makes it's hard for me to make an assessment on it. As far as again, it's Belichick, but you're right. Like this guy might not be even in the league in 2 years because again, he might not adapt very well to it. But I don't know. Belichick with his picks with the small school guys, but again, he's missed on picks before.
Yeah, I mean, you give him a little leeway, but it was not a great pick.
Yeah, no GM bats 1,000.
Yeah.
But one important thing about Duggar, though, that I can kind of see why they might have done it is he was a senior. So he participated in the annual Senior Bowl down in Alabama in Montgomery, where all the coaches and GMs go to. So they got much more of an extensive meeting with him than just at the combine or pro days. They're down there for 2-3. They got to see him do 7-on-7s, do interviews with him, stuff like that. So they might have seen or heard it or gotten something from him that made it seem like he was worth that.
Yeah, I agree. That's actually a point that I bring up to people sometimes as well, is that people are going to probably target a lot of Senior Bowl guys because they got an option to be around them. That's why I was shocked Denzel Mims didn't go a little bit higher, because that was one of those few times where the interviews and being able to see him on the field, that's where Denzel Mims' stock went up, was the Senior Bowl, and he showed he could handle a little bit of press coverage, showed that his route running wasn't totally bad, showed that he can catch. Kev, what was one of your least favorite picks on day 2?
I feel like I'm beating a dead horse here, but Aaron Rodgers and the Green Bay, you could have got Josh Jones and you didn't get him. You got A.J. Dillon and you got somebody else. Like, come on, help the man out, please. Lord have mercy.
I don't.
Green Bay.
I don't disagree with that. We're gonna get into. We'll beat the horse on Green Bay. We'll all get to chime in on Green Bay at the end. But I kind of agree. A.J. Dillon was kind of a weird pick there.
And then you go back and you get him a tight end, but you get him in later rounds. Like,
yeah. Well, that's going to be don't worry. We'll brutalize Green Bay at the end. Hang on. Colby, your turn. Unless Rich wants to also add something before we get to you.
No, I'll defer on this one.
Colby, what was one of your least favorite picks on day 2, man?
There's going to be a little bit of a pent-up anger that I'm going to let out here. Jalen Hurts. That pick, man.
Now the Eagles have the 2 best quarterbacks in the division. Why are you complaining?
Yeah, just because I think that when CeeDee Lamb started to fall, and I thought we could have gone trade up to the Falcons, and I think what stopped Howie Roseman from making that trade was we wanted to hang on to that 2nd-round pick. And okay, I'm okay with Rager, but if you're going to use that 2nd-round pick to take a backup gadget quarterback, please don't.
Wentz is gonna get benched for him in a year or 2.
That's
best case scenario, I guess.
Start immediately,
especially when there was so many good secondary personnel on the board, and which was such a weakness for you guys last year. And you got rid of Malcolm Jenkins, so you could have used a safety as well. It was mind-boggling for sure.
Awful pick.
And also, just to address the trade-up thing, it's also possible they didn't have anybody who wanted to trade with them, right? Like you were talking about Atlanta Falcons. Atlanta's usually one of those teams that trades up, not back. And I was talking before about San Francisco potentially being like, hey, we called up Tampa Bay and we told them we're trading. They called up Tampa Bay and they got a 4th rounder going back 1 pick. It might have been Philadelphia was the one calling up and being like, hey, we'll offer you a 2nd. And when you're looking at it going like, yeah, if we take a 2nd, though, we're going to miss a guy who's like a top 10 pick on our board. So I think that it might have been they just didn't have a caller there. What's up?
Arthur Blank and Dan Quinn are also on the hot seat as well. So I doubt they wanted to trade down.
Yeah, it's just like the one redeeming quality I have in this pick is that going back to a few years after they won the Super Bowl, Doug Peterson and Howie Roseman had like this interview where they said like they think the future is somehow getting 2 quarterbacks in the field at once. I don't really get how that's going to play out, but if they're trying to get their guy for that now and they're going to revolutionize the league, then I guess maybe. But like for now, conventional wisdom, it's not a good pick.
When you have 2 quarterbacks, you have no quarterbacks.
Yeah.
Well, it's also a good insurance policy because Wentz does have an injury history.
Yeah, exactly. That's the problem. Is like Wentz has been injured a lot. Now, granted, Wentz got spiked into the ground by Jadeveon Clowney.
Yeah.
Depends. I don't know if I really call it a dirty hit, but he had a concussion. He hasn't historically he hasn't had concussion issues. He's had different injuries. Some of it might be because he's the way he plays opens him up to injury. I think it's the difference between injury prone versus prone to injury. His play is prone to injury. So that's why
that's lawyer talk right there.
Like injury prone is where you have you keep on tearing your ACL, right? It's a recurrent injury. I think he's prone to injury because of the way he plays. Same with Jimmy Garoppolo, right? Jimmy Garoppolo tore his ACL when he was running out of the pocket, going towards the sideline. His foot jammed up and he turned a certain way, tore his ACL. That's how Carson Wentz, he was being mobile, got out of the pocket, tore his ACL. Sometimes it's the way you play that opens you up to injury, and they've seen that, so they said, listen, we'll get a guy, he's not similar, but maybe he has some versatility to, hey, we could use him as a running back, we could use him as a tight end, we can maybe, see if we can adapt him. This is really early to take that kind of a player.
Yeah.
I agree. I did like their day 3. I thought that helped recoup a little bit of that value. But when you have to say that about your second round pick, we went over this earlier, that it's not a good sign. So what was that?
We get to Green Bay's suckiness.
Yeah, we'll go to Green Bay now, and then we'll do our favorite day 3 pick. So, Green Bay had a really weird, probably the worst draft I think I've seen in my entire time watching the NFL draft. And they took Jordan Love in the first round, then they take A.J. Dillon, and they go the whole draft without taking a single receiver after Aaron Rodgers goes on Pat McAfee's show going like, it'd be nice if they took like a good weapon, a good receiving weapon. They haven't done that in a while, like take one of those guys early.
He said that during the first round. The first round going on when he said that.
Exactly. So, again, it's like your quarterback of the future, your quarterback of the now, one of the best quarterbacks in the league, right? Actually asks, like, can you go ahead and get it makes it known that he'd be a fan of taking a receiver or offensive weapon in the first round, maybe the second round, and they don't get and not definitely not a receiver in the first. Well, not even in the whole draft, they didn't take a receiver. They took a tight end who's really more of a fullback tight end, and they took a running back in the second round who you got Aaron Jones and Jamal Williams at the end of their contract, but it was really early to take that guy. So, let's hear.
Here's what makes zero sense about it. At the earliest, Jordan Love's going to play in the 2022 season because Aaron Rodgers still has 2 years left on a huge contract. So even if he played this year and you fell in love with Jordan Love in practice as Matt LaFleur and Brian Gutekunst, the GM, you can't move Aaron Rodgers on the last year of his contract in 2021. So Jordan Love's not going to play for 2 years. And you traded up.
Yeah. I think that also hurts too. Like you missed out on a pick there. Shane, you can go. Yeah.
Yeah. To go along with that. Yeah. He's not going to be able to play for 2, 3, maybe 4 years. By the time he does play, you're barely going to have any time left on his rookie contract before you owe him more money.
I'm just looking at it right now. Is my volume on? I'm sorry. Yeah. Okay. Sorry. The cap hit for Aaron Rodgers in 2022 is $39 million. And in 2023, it's $28 million.
Woo. Yeah, dude, that's expensive. But again, they can get out in a couple of years. I think that it's in 2 years they can get out with a $17 million cap hit. And a year after that, they have a $2 million cap hit if they get rid of them. But even still, okay, so pretend that you're okay. Say there's a chance they can go ahead and recoup this draft, right? They say, you know what, Jordan Love, that's not a horrible pick. What if we go ahead and because Jordan Love, look, it's the same story of Aaron Rodgers. He did that with Brett Favre. But then they spend the rest of the draft not addressing anything of what they needed.
They did that, but that was also under a different collective bargaining agreement and a different contract system. So when they did that, it was a completely different league. I know it doesn't seem so, only being 12, 13 years ago. But it was a completely different league when they did it.
I'd actually argue that the change in that contract system is better now for them to do that because you have a rookie wage scale and it's cheap to keep the guy on your roster. Colby, what do you think about we'll go with Jordan Love first. We'll hear everybody's thoughts on Jordan Love. But Colby, I want to get your thoughts on Jordan Love about that pick.
I think Jordan Love's a good future quarterback. I just think, my biggest issue is the trading up and the fact that he probably would have fallen, I think, to the second round if you really wanted him. My biggest issue is that the last offensive skill position player the Packers took in the first round was Aaron Rodgers. It's been that long. So they haven't tried it since then. I think maybe you give it a shot.
Yeah, and then
was the last receiver they drafted in the first round.
Oh, Lord.
And then what was it? I think Eddie Lacy was another one that was drafted in the second round.
Yeah, he went
That was
second.
it. So you drafted a running back in the second round 1 year. Basically, one of the comments was that A.J. Dillon's basically are trying their attempt to get a new Eddie Lacy. Kev, what do you think about this? You mentioned A.J. Dillon before. You mentioned Jordan Love. What do you think about the Green Bay Packers going with Jordan Love?
I'm not hating on Jordan Love, but it's just like you have something there right now, and you won 13 games. You want to expand. You want to expand this man's career, and you're not doing that at all.
Super Bowl.
Exactly, and you didn't do that. So, if I'm Aaron Rodgers, I would have been on the phone like, "Get me out of here." Obviously, you don't care for me. Get me out of here. F you, I'm out. I'll take my
like how do
scotch.
you think he feels? Like their team just traded up to get this guy, and not only that, but when they selected him, there was video of like how excited Matt LaFleur was. So Aaron Rodgers, and so Aaron has got to be like, "Yo, okay, I guess I'll just go fuck myself then." Like,
yeah.
What's the plan? These guys aren't dumb, right? I mean, you're all saying that they're dumb and they have no plan. They must have something. They're not. They're intelligent people. So what is the playing devil's advocate? What is their explanation for doing it?
Matt LaFleur's a stooge. He only had 1 year of play calling as an offensive coordinator. Dude, he's stooge. Matt LaStooge, that's his new name.
On those, Matt LaFleur said that he did not want Jordan Love to pass him by, and he had to have him. But I'm like, if you have a hard on like that, just get him later. Like, be patient. Everything will come to you.
To address Rich's counterpoint, like I said, I can understand the argument behind going after Jordan Love. You had a similar situation. You saw it work so well before, and you really believe in this quarterback. You go at him. You get the fifth-year option. You have 5 years to have him on your roster. I don't hate that mindset. My problem is you went the rest of the draft. You traded up to get the guy. You went the rest of the draft and didn't spend assets to get up and try and get a receiver, a falling weapon. That would have kind of recouped a little bit of the value here, where you could have went ahead and got, they could have traded up and got Denzel Mims. They could have, they missed out by taking him. They missed out on Michael Pittman Jr. They missed out on Laviska Shenault. They missed out on a bunch of players. So with as far as receivers go. So KJ Hamler, they missed on getting some speed. They've had real issues with offensive weapons outside of their running backs and Devontae Adams. And then they didn't get anything on defense to help them stop the run, which was a big problem that they had last year.
But it's like, my thing is this, though, is like, this isn't a wild card team or a bubble team. This team had a first-round bye, and they went 13-3, and they were 1 game away from the Super Bowl. And they're still in the Super Bowl window. They have a top 5, top 10 at worst at every skill position, except for tight end. They lost offensive linemen and a linebacker, or 2 linebackers, actually. They're still in the Super Bowl window, and they did nothing to improve. They built for the future. Like, they're in the Super Bowl window. They should be in a win-now mentality, but they addressed their team as if they went 9-7 last year or 8-8.
Is it possible that they're trying to use him like the Saints used Taysom Hill?
No, he's a completely different type of player. He's a natural, like he's a strong-armed, deep ball thrower, decent mobility, not very physical, like avoids contact, slides to avoid hits. He's definitely going to be used as a quarterback. It would be more likely that the Eagles use Jalen Hurts as like Taysom Hill, even though he's completely different. But Jordan Love is a quarterback, if you want to call him that. But I don't see him being used like Taysom Hill.
But to go to Shane's point, they lost 2 linebackers. Their defensive line got shredded in the NFC Championship game. And the receiver point, they drafted a linebacker in the 5th round was the first time they took a linebacker. And they took 1 defensive lineman that was with their last pick, the 28th pick in round 7, which is what? Pick 246 or whatever. I mean, they're a couple plays away from the Super Bowl, right? And they drafted a quarterback and a running back, 2 things that they are pretty good at.
And they could have taken running back later, too. They could have spent their third round pick on a running back. They could have traded up in the third round and got a running back. They could have traded up in the second and got a guy too. The other issue I had is offensive lineman was kind of a question mark coming in here, right? Yeah, they signed Ricky Wagner in free agency. Because they let Brian Bulaga go. But unless there's some rumors they believe in Eggleton Jenkins to potentially be a right tackle, or the one of their guards that they had play last year who they signed on a deal in free agency a year ago. But still, it's even with those thoughts, you didn't address your offensive line. I get Ricky Wagner's your stopgap right now, and your offensive line picks were late day 3 picks. Nothing here that you spent the 4th rounder, so you miss out a pick there. It didn't make sense from a team building perspective. It's also contrary to how the Packers have previously operated. That's why I think everybody's a little shocked, right? It's, when the Packers needed something, like if they wanted running back, they went to a draft and went, even if they didn't take him in the first 3 rounds, how they got Aaron Jones and Jamal Williams. They drafted them back-to-back, 4th round, 5th round. They threw multiple picks at it. Okay, fine. They needed a receiver. How'd they get the receivers that are on their team now? Well, all right, they threw a couple of extra picks at it. They went after, they went ahead and drafted Equanimeous St. Brown, and they Martavis Valdez-Scantling and Javon Moore and all these guys in day 3 of the draft. That is an option. They didn't even do that here. Apparently, they either believe in the guys who are on the roster, or I don't know. They just didn't believe that they had options there to go ahead and grab. But we saw other teams go ahead and do it, go after receivers later on too. Any last thoughts on the Green Bay Packers draft before we move on?
Yeah, I'd like to just add some. You just see the difference between the Packers mentality and the mentality of somebody like the Saints. The Saints, they have Drew Brees. He's 5 years older than Aaron Rodgers, and they're still building around him. Aaron Rodgers, who I think he's a few years younger than Brees. They're obviously, as Shane said, they're obviously still in the Super Bowl window. And for my money, I think Aaron Rodgers is a better quarterback than Drew Brees. And then they treat him like trash in the first round,
And I think that's a great point, Harry. I think that, you see other teams, build around their aging quarterback, and then they find other ways. Jameis Winston's out there, right? What if they made a run at Jameis Winston and said, "Hey, listen, dude, we'll give you 2 years, $10 million. You stay on the roster or whatever. We get you in the system." Building for 5 years from now is kind of hard, right? Maybe Jordan Love pans out, maybe he didn't. If he doesn't pan out, you just spent a 1st round pick in a really good draft of deep players. And then, the other thing is you look at how the Saints are playing this game, and maybe it bites them in the ass a couple years down the road. But you look at what they've built around him, and then you look at how they prepare for the future, right? Listen, why are you going to prepare for 5 years down the road with your 1st round pick, with a quarterback, if you're not even sure your quarterback's going to be done playing for you by then? It goes both ways. I totally get it. I think the Packers are so used to the mentality of, and again, I think my problem's with the rest of the draft. I got accustomed to the Jordan Love pick, provided they fixed the draft, and they didn't. They didn't do anything. Colby, you have any last thoughts? Kris? No? All right, let's go to day 3 of the draft, right? We're not going to do worst pick of day 3 because, I think Kris brought this up. Kris, you could tell everybody. Why aren't we going to talk about the worst pick of day 3?
A long snapper was drafted on day 3, so there's plenty of terrible picks on
multiple kickers, too. So, yeah, but just the best pick
racist
of day 3.
Long snappers.
I thought that was the best pick of day 3. Are you kidding me? Colby, you go first. What was your favorite pick on day 3?
You're making me go against the Eagles again, but I'm gonna say Bradley and I with the Cowboys. I think he's a 2nd or 3rd round pick in my mind, and they got him at the end of the 5th, last pick of the 5th round. They probably should have gone, if CeeDee Lamb didn't fall in the 1st round, they probably should have gone with Jason, but they get the guy who plays a very similar way in the day 3, so no harm, no foul, and they get CeeDee Lamb. So I think they rectify that, and that completes their draft for me.
Dude, I don't disagree with you there. I liked Bradley and I a lot. I liked watching him. I saw him beat up on a 1st rounder Austin Jackson on a little bit of game film, so that was kind of fun to watch. Kev, what was one of your favorite day 3 picks?
I have 2. I like Curtis Weaver going to Miami because you help him build a culture over there. And I also like the Minnesota Vikings getting Kenny Wilkinson. I love this kid, man. This guy is amazing to me. And for him to fall to day 3, I loved it. To go to Minnesota with Mike Zimmer in there, oh, awesome.
Nice. So those are both good picks. I was shocked Curtis Weaver fell as far as he did. And I think part of it's the small school spot, and also he's kind of a tweener, right? You don't know what role he's going to play in the NFL. He's a pass rusher, but what kind of scheme are you going to utilize him in? What does he do well? There's some guys who you say are positionless because they can do multiple things really well. Is he positionless or is he homeless? And I think some people got a little bit more. I think some coaches thought maybe more he was homeless. He's not a 3-4, he's not a 3-4 rusher. He's not, but that's how he rushed when he was in college. He doesn't have the build for that. He's also oddly shaped, right? He's like 260 something pounds and he's 6'2". He's kind of built like a bowling ball. Honestly, I think I would have liked him on my team. I was hoping he'd get drafted by the Browns. I thought Curtis Weaver was a good pick. Kris, what do you think? What's one of your picks that you liked?
Ben Bartch to Jacksonville, the lineman out of St. John's.
Yes. Oh, the small school guy made a big name for himself at the Senior Bowl. Did really well at the Senior Bowl.
Jacksonville had a good under the radar draft, and that was one of those picks.
Yeah, no, I liked Ben Bartch as well. And the only problem is I think the reason why he fell to day 3 is clearly hard to gauge from his tape, but he definitely. From the Senior Bowl, from the Combine, they were at least you're able to gauge a little bit out of it. I think he's got potential to be good in the NFL. Again, you get him on day 3, you get him in to see if he's actually ready to hold up in the NFL. Harry, what was one of your favorite day 3 picks?
This may be a little unconventional, but I'm gonna go Jake Fromm going to Buffalo. I think you gave Josh Allen a good backup. Obviously Josh Allen's had some injury history, so you could have somebody who could step in, and maybe if Josh Allen regresses this year, like I said, with you saw it happen with Trubisky with a couple of years ago. He was carried by his defense, and then in year 3 he completely fell off. Maybe it's like you may be even getting an upgrade with Jake Fromm, and also that took a potential heir apparent to Tom Brady away, taking him ahead of New England. So.
Yeah, I kind of like the Jake Fromm pick myself too. I was shocked he fell as far as he did. I think what we're seeing in the NFL more now is that teams are, if they're going to take you on day 3, if they're going to take you, they want to see the upside and what you can do. And I think a lot of teams had a hard time seeing the upside of Jake Fromm. He's accurate, but he's not Tom Brady accurate. He had decent ball placement. He's okay athletic. He's the exact opposite of Josh Allen. That's for damn sure. That was the one weird part about that pick is wait a second, you guys have Josh Allen and his backup's going to be Jake Fromm. That would be trying to, you have Godzilla in a fight and his backup is Mickey Mouse. It doesn't make sense.
Well, his backups have been Barkley and what's his face? AJ McCarron, who Jake Fromm is very comparable to.
That's true. I even said before that his fall is kind of similar to AJ McCarron. People were talking about him earlier that year. So not for nothing, you're right, Shane. That's a good point. His backers have been those guys. I know they were interested in Tyree Jackson last year. Is a little bit more similar to him, but he couldn't win in camp. But yeah, Jake Fromm. It'd be interesting to see if Jake Fromm takes it over from Josh Allen because they have all those weapons there. Josh Allen is is prone to injury from the way he plays. So if he goes ahead and gets injured in a play, you have Jake Fromm come in there. They've got a lot of good weapons there. I could see him maybe stealing the job. Shane, what was one of your favorite day 3 picks?
Tyler Johnson, wide receiver out of Minnesota, going to Tampa Bay. He was one of my favorite wide receivers in the whole draft. I thought he was his speed's not top end, it's average, but as a route runner, I thought he was top 5 in the whole draft. And he's going to a team where he's not going to be the 1 or the 2 option or even the 3 option because they have Evans and Godwin and Gronk now. But it's a team that can help him, refine him, get him better, and still give him use. They could also use him in the slot and move Godwin to the outside or even switch him around. It gives Arians and Brady a lot to work with, and I just think he's such a good player, great route runner, and he's going to a team where he'll get a lot of use out of it.
I don't disagree. I think that was actually a really good spot to go. They do need a wide receiver 3. They've lost Humphreys. They lost Rashad Perriman. I agree with you, man. I think that Johnson's a good pickup for him. Any last thoughts on these day 3 picks? Any ones that stick out to you guys further, or anybody want to comment on any of the other day 3 picks that have come up so far?
Amik Robertson out of Louisiana Tech going to Las Vegas.
Yeah, it was the one Raiders pick you really liked, right?
Yeah. Well, the reason he went so late was because he's coming off an injury and he's only 5'8". But strictly as a slot corner, he might have been the first or second best slot corner in the entire draft.
No, that was a good pickup on their end. Probably actually the better cornerback that they got. What's up?
He also plays bigger than his size.
Yeah.
I want to throw in KJ Hill to the Chargers in the 7th round from Ohio State. Yeah, I mean, Ohio State just produces everything, but especially receivers and corners. And I think he's pretty sure-handed. He's a good route runner, and he's fast enough. And I think that's a steal. It's in the 7th round.
Yeah, Brian Hartline coaches him up really well over there.
Yes.
No, I thought that was a good pickup, too. I liked Donovan Peoples-Jones in the 6th round for the Browns. That was just personally me. Because I think that could just develop into something cool. But if anything, he's just a punt returner. You guys, that was it was a great draft. Now, the big thing with the big draft, right, is now you have all these free agents that were veteran free agents that are sitting out there, right? They've been waiting. They've been waiting to sign contracts. We saw it earlier, Jameis Winston. And tomorrow, the pick, you can sign free agents, and it doesn't affect your comp pick formula, which is a big deal because now you have guys who are like, now you have teams that are out there going like, I could sign, Denard as a slot corner, and I don't have to worry about like it counting against me maybe getting a compensatory 4th rounder next year. So, any idea where you think any particular free agent where you guys think might land somewhere? Like, we see Jameis Winston ending up with the Saints. We keep on hearing about Jadeveon Clowney. I just mentioned Darqueze Denard. He had a teammate as well as a corner, Drake Patrick. A couple Nigel Bradham's out there at linebacker. He's actually a pretty good linebacker. Any free agents that you think might land in a particular place? Cam Newton, even.
I have an interesting one.
Oh yeah,
and
Kris.
That's Joe Flacco.
Yes.
Could he go? If you're a team that thinks you're on the precipice of winning, and you have a quarterback, or you don't have a backup quarterback, that you don't have a veteran backup quarterback, or you have a quarterback that gets, say, hurt a lot, and a guy like Joe Flacco can be I'm going to say this name, we're all going to laugh, but he can be like a Ryan Fitzpatrick, right?
Yeah.
Around the league. Listen, the guy's won a Super Bowl, so he could be a good veteran backup for a team, a contending team. Just two teams I thought of where San Francisco doesn't have a veteran backup, and we saw the problems that happened with Pittsburgh last year when Big Ben got hurt. So I just thought those were two interesting places that could, and it might be even later. It might be later into July or August when a guy like Flacco gets picked up.
Yeah, I think teams might be kind of done with Flacco because they saw what he did in Denver. They saw he was kind of on his way out in Baltimore. He just couldn't seem to put it together when he went to Denver. And then the other options that are available to him, like maybe Washington if they don't feel well about Kyle Allen and Dwayne Haskins.
That's what I'm saying. I think he's a later. I think he won't get signed now, but if someone's desperate for a quarterback or desperate for a backup, he's that type of guy, I think. And I just think that he's an interesting name out there. Not one of the top tier names.
Yeah, no, that's a good one. That's a good one that people aren't really thinking of too much because you have the big names on the market. You have Jameis Winston. You have Cam Newton. You already saw Flacco bounce around a little bit. So that's a good pick, Kris. I agree with you, man. Harry, what about you? Any free agents that you think might any particular free agents that you are interested in seeing where they're going, where they might end up?
Well, as you guys mentioned, the Giants, they need a pass rusher, and they really didn't address that in the draft. So I think they're gonna be the landing spot for Jadeveon Clowney.
Really?
Yeah, I've heard he's been linked to them.
That's an interesting spot for him because Jadeveon Clowney, Like, I wouldn't think of him I have a hard time thinking of him. It'd be interesting to see him be. Also, Joe Judge is an interesting coach, right? Like, you just don't know what's going to happen next with this guy because we haven't seen it. He's a special teams guy, so we're not seeing a predictor for what he might do. Offensively, defensively, what he might want out of his team. So it's an interesting connection. You're right, though. Giants don't have a pass rusher. This was actually my big problem with their draft is it didn't even seem like they tried to go for pass rusher. Part of it is honestly, I think the big thing that hurt the Giants draft was trading for Leonard Williams during the season. And I think it actually helped the Jets draft quite a bit. That gave them 2 picks to kind of play around with. So that's kind of honestly where I feel my issues with the Giants kind of land. There's also they actually still have Marcus Golden out there. They had him last year. He had a decent year. He was pretty functional. Maybe they go ahead and sign him. Colby, what do you think? What's a free agent guy that you think where he might land, a potential spot? Maybe that you're interested in where a guy might particularly land.
I'm gonna go with Logan Ryan, the corner. I think my top 2 places for him are either going to be going back to Tennessee, or I think just because of how much cap space the Jets have, and I don't think they have any really real studs at corner, I think he might go to the Jets.
Yeah, the Jets. You know what's funny? I have an actual sleeper for the Jets that since you're mentioning corner, I was thinking Eli Apple to the Jets because I know Greg Williams loves himself some press man coverage. And Eli Apple, that was like one of the spots that he succeeded in. And he's probably coming off a cheap deal. He was supposed to go to the Raiders. Then him and the Raiders couldn't work out their deal. He got to walk. And then they drafted, who was the guy? Was it Arnett that they drafted?
Yes.
Now I'm
You're not hearing Shane?
Damon Arnett. So, Shane, actually, is Shane still here? Or is Shane in the bathroom?
I'm here.
What was one of your what free agent guy are you interested in seeing where they land, particularly, or like where you think a particular free agent guy might land?
It's not exciting, but I think Alec Ogletree goes to Green Bay
because he's going to be cheap, and they need linebackers, and they're obviously intent on making dumb decisions. So I think that's where he'll go.
See, that was my feelings on Green Bay. You fuck up this draft this bad, right? Can't you have to go out in free agency and get some extra guys to throw around Aaron Rodgers? Maybe that's what they were waiting for. Because if you look, they didn't sign very many people in free agency, and everybody they signed was a cut, right? They signed Kiko Alonso, not Kiko Alonso, Kirka. They signed Ricky Wagner, who was the right tackle for Detroit Lions, and they signed Christian Kirksey, former linebacker of the Browns. Both those guys were cut, so they don't count towards the pick formula. It sounds like they're playing towards that game. Maybe that's what they were waiting for, is maybe to get to the end of get to the real free agent meet. The only problem is there's not really a lot of receivers in free agency. Maybe a Taylor Gabriel. Like, there wasn't a particular one that I was like, when I was looking through this list, I saw a couple of defensive guys, like you said, Alec Ogletree. So I think that's a good one.
I could see Golden going to the Colts as well.
Golden would be an interesting one because the Colts have no problem like taking guys who don't usually fit a certain way and sticking them in their scheme. Eberflus is actually a really good defensive coordinator. Again, that's a guy who people were shouting about maybe being a head coach last year. So he would get a good amount of use out of Golden.
Him or
what?
Him or Ziggy Ansah.
Ziggy Ansah is another one too. Ziggy Ansah is a weird one because it's weird because I feel like he hasn't been in the league that long, and then all of a sudden you realize he's like 31 years old because he was an older guy coming out. Kris, did you mention a guy yet?
Yeah, I mentioned Flacco.
Flacco, right? Kev, what do you think? Is there a particular free agent that you'd be interested in?
There's actually 2, and your boy took one of mine early, Logan Ryan. I'm because he was a good corner, and for him not to find a home yet, it's like what's going on?
Well,
and then
he's expensive.
He's trying to get $20 million.
Yeah, and then the second one is Cam Newton. Like, when's Cam going to find a home? Does somebody have to get hurt for him to get a home, or is someone going to pick him up before all these things happen. So Cam's my one. Like, where's Cam gonna land? Because I don't think he can float out there forever.
Well, because the thing with him too, though, is like you really see Cam Newton taking a role where it's like, hey, you're going to be our backup, or hey, we'll let you compete for the starting job. Like that, like no, like he's going to go somewhere where he's going to be the starter, and there's none of that left.
Yeah,
yeah, exactly. So
maybe
that's
Green
why
Bay could sign him.
No, Cam Newton's a funny one because originally I thought he might go to the Chargers, right? Because they were, they needed a quarterback. I think they were kind of, you saw the picture of him with Tyrod Taylor. It seemed like Tyrod Taylor even gave his blessing, like, hey, I'll be the backup to this guy. Like, I get to watch him go ahead and run through people like he's a tank. And then when he gets injured, I get to run around. So, and maybe that's even still a possibility. Maybe he will take a cheaper deal. I don't think so. I kind of agree with Shane. It's because he was already part of the reason why he was leaving Carolina was that they felt like he wouldn't go into this year of his deal without any guaranteed money. Now he apparently was willing to go in, but again, Carolina moved on. He's got injury concerns. It's a very weird thing with Cam Newton as to where he might land because again, teams are now at the point where they've drafted their guys. And the guys who he's familiar with don't seem overly interested in bringing him in. So you haven't had – now, granted, COVID's also affected it too. You don't have that true off season of getting to know the playbook. Harry, what was a free agent that you have particular interest in, maybe where a particular guy might land?
I talked about Jadeveon Clowney.
Jadeveon Clowney.
Yeah.
Can I just chime in on Cam Newton for a minute?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah.
I think I think one potential landing spot, once he can get evaluated for his health and everything, would be the Steelers. I think Ben Roethlisberger's almost done. Mason Rudolph and Hodges are not going to be the long-term answer. I think maybe he does what some people thought Jameis Winston would do and back up Roethlisberger for a year or two, and then he's the guy.
I wouldn't mind that at all.
I actually hope that happens because I'm a fucking nerd. Because if he goes to the Steelers, then that would mean every team in that division has a Heisman Trophy winner. And
yeah,
that's all I would care. Like, it would just make me unsatisfied.
I would prefer him not go to the Steelers just because it's the Steelers. But okay. I was just gonna wear
that would end the Cleveland Browns' reign of dominance on the AFC North.
True. Just again, it's another option as far as that goes. I don't know. I honestly feel like Cam Newton's gonna have a hard time in a particular spot. You're right though. I do like the Cam Newton to the Steelers. That's a good one good landing spot. I hope it doesn't happen. I hope he finds a better home or different home. But I was still really hoping for the Chargers. Yeah,
I thought that's where Winston was gonna go.
Yeah, it was the one I thought too. I was hoping Winston because he throws a lot of touchdowns to the defense.
Yeah.
I think he led the league in defensive touchdowns last year. He was defensive MVP last year, everybody.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And you went with back-to-back rapist QBs.
A couple of guys who I'm a little shocked by is I think the D tackles are an interesting one. You have Damon Harrison, Snacks is still out there, Marcel Darius, Mike Daniels. You got a couple of like you said before, Ansa. There's a couple of other pass rushers like Vinny Curry, Michael Bennett. This is where I think Seattle kind of builds their team up, right? Like they seem to wait this long, and whoever's the last pass rushers to get signed, who's looking for a cheap deal to recoup their value. We saw Jadeveon Clowney last year get traded there. We saw Ziggy Ansah go ahead and sign there late last year. That seems to be where a lot of guys go to try and recoup value. So I could see I keep an eye on that team going into this as well.
Whoa!
But, what?
I have a question, and this could be everybody. Who's one free agent that you think should just hang it up? Don't play no more. Just retire.
Joe Flacco.
Yeah, Flacco.
Yeah, I think it's unanimous. It's Joe Flacco. I think that's the easy one.
Arguably Newton. Newton. I don't know. I mean, that's kind of an out of the box answer, but he's very injury prone.
Yeah. I mean, he is, and that part of it's his style that he played for. So
So then that's prone to injury. We've been over this. I need you to pay more attention.
I gotta do lawyer talk. Lawyer speak.
Do you think Frank Gore should hang it up?
Yes.
Yeah, dude. How is Frank Gore still playing?
I forgot he was still out there.
I'm tired of these taking snaps away from running backs who actually might be good. Like, it's just because like coaches respect him because he's older than him. He's like, he's the senior, so they like respect your elders. All right, fine. I guess we'll play Frank Gore.
Maybe that's what they're hoping. Older than
what?
How many coaches is
Sean at least 5.
Yeah,
he's older than Taylor. He's older than LaFleur. He's older than McVay.
Older than Shanahan.
Oh yes, Shanahan.
He might be. I don't know. No, there's no way. Shanahan went to college with Chris Sims in the late 90s.
Is he older than Kingsbury?
Oh, yeah. There's another one. That's 4.
The guy for Cincinnati.
Yeah, that's Taylor. I said him.
Yeah, he said Taylor.
He might be older than Flores.
What about Joe Judge? How old is Joe Judge?
I think he's still like 36.
Damn.
I think that's
I was kidding about him being older than everybody, but apparently it's very true.
No, Joe Judge is
38.
One team I wanted to talk about, we didn't really talk about them a lot, was the Carolina Panthers with Matt Rule. And,
all defense.
All defense.
Yes. The only time it's ever happened where a team went all defense in the draft.
But it was a good draft. Very good draft.
It was. They had, they went Derek Brown, which I thought was a good, safe pick to go with. And then Yehuda Matos and Jeremy Chin were really good, high upside picks. I dug it. I just thought I'd bring them up because I thought it was like one of those things that maybe should get mentioned. Especially
they also took the cornerback out of the name. I can't think of his name right now. Troy.
Oh, Troy. Not Troy Dye. Troy Dye. No, Troy Dye was a linebacker. I know who you're talking about though.
What school did you say?
Notre Dame.
Yeah, the defensive back out of Notre Dame, Troy. What's his
Troy
name?
Pride.
Yeah, Troy Pride Jr. Very good pick, especially because they lost Bradbury. I don't like. He's not necessarily a replacement for that, but he was a good pick, and for the value they got him at.
So yeah, we're kind of coming to a close, everybody. Anybody have like any final thoughts on the draft? Any like particular things? We can go in a cycle. I'll go start with Chris, and we'll go around. Chris, what do you want to?
I did see an interview with Goodell, and obviously you've seen the ratings shattered, all kinds of ratings because everyone was sitting at fucking home with nothing to do. But he did make a point that there were some really cool things about the draft this year, and seeing like the coaches and the GMs home with their families. Andrew's a married guy with kids, and it was a fun thing to see, I think, for the draft. You know, like Matt Rule's 2 girls were dancing around with pom-poms every time they would show them and have a pick. I think that was something that came out of this that was really neat and interesting. Maybe I'm just
I agree. It made it fun. It made you got to see like what was it? Vrabel's house. Vrabel's house looked like
Kingsbury. We kept talking about Kingsbury's house. Like it was
Kingsbury's house was a plush, man.
What did you think about that, Andrew, as the resident family man here?
Yeah, I think it brought a human element to the draft that you don't normally see.
Right, you think of these coaches as like these maniacal lunatics, like in their office all hours of the night watching film.
Yeah, as opposed to everything being run by like machines and just cold decisions. You have humans and their families and their livelihood all behind it. And Bill
Belichick. Nike.
Yeah, it was the difference between them all too, right? Like you had some of them with their families, and you had Bill Belichick with his dog picking people. Honestly, Bill Belichick's dog's probably better at drafting than some teams.
Than Brian Gutekunst.
Yeah, this year definitely. That was it. Again, like with the whole Green Bay draft, that was my big shock. Is like Gutekunst did well his first year drafting. Like everybody was raving about it. Even if you weren't a fan of Rashawn Gary, you were still a fan of like his first 2 drafts because like he got them picks in the future, and they drafted Jair Alexander and Chauncey. Who was the safety they drafted in the first round last year? In like a 6'3" something.
Savage.
Yeah, Darnell Savage. So they did so well, and now all of a sudden you're looking at them, and it's like, what did you do? Did you get like maybe they gave the book to maybe Belichick's dog was drafting. He was drafting for the Packers. Shane, you got any last thoughts for the night?
Just like I said, like I'm a nerd and I love like fun facts and shit. This, especially because I I've grown up watching football since a kid. So this draft had Antoine Winfield, Randy Moss, and Michael Pittman's son all in them. I just thought that was kind of cool to see.
Mm-hmm.
Speaking of, there was a lot of like
Runyon, Heck.
Oh yeah, I forgot about John Runyon.
Yeah.
Speaking of, you brought up Moss. He went undrafted. Were there any other undrafted guys you guys like were shocked went undrafted? Any like players that you were?
Javon Leak, kinda, because he was first team All Big Ten as a return specialist. He split time as a running back with McFarland at Maryland, but as a punt and kick returner, he was very good. And I thought some team would see some value in that. That way, they don't have to use a wide receiver or a defensive back on special teams.
Yeah, the Jets signed 2 D-backs that I thought would have been drafted. Lamar Jackson, not the famous one, and that Javelin Guidry kid from Utah. I thought they would have been drafted. Jets got them both.
What about you, Kev?
The Bryant boys not getting drafted. Just that's probably
Hunter
one of me.
Bryant out of Washington.
Like,
his thing I think was medicals. There were a lot of guys who almost didn't get drafted because of medicals, and that's a good thing about having a 7th round pick. Prince Tega was one of those guys who went in the 7th round, went to the Eagles. He was almost about to go undrafted. Trey Adams too, tackle out of Washington.
Like you said, he talked himself about the league. Trey Adams.
Yeah. Kris, you got any additions there?
Nope.
Harry?
No, I think. Yeah.
All right. And then, Harry, you have any last thoughts for the night?
Nope. That's like you said. Like the only guy was really like surprised it went undrafted was Thaddeus Moss, and you said him before. So that's really about it.
Colby, you have any before we end out the night? You have any final thoughts about the draft, about the teams, the players, any particular ones that you want to bring up?
Just this is like my thing. This is draft day is like something I look forward to all year. So thank you for having me.
No, thank you, dude. Thanks for coming on. You made it fun. It was great having another guy on that knows what he's talking about with it, and you seem very knowledgeable. It's great having you on.
Thanks.
Yeah, sure.
Kev, you have any final thoughts?
Yeah. Hey, Chris Kingsbury, let me borrow your crib for a day.
Dude, right? That place looked dope. That place looked like a place you have out like what a Hollywood producer has.
I saw a meme. I saw a meme. It was Kingsbury's setup and Vrabel's setup side by side, and it said Cliff Kingsbury looks like a mob boss or cartel leader, and Mike Vrabel looks like the FBI agent trying to catch it.
Yeah, it was lovely what Cliff Kingsbury's crib looked like. So yeah, that was for me.
Yeah, it was a fun draft. Like not for nothing. It also felt like it was a lot of teams drafted pretty well, and there was only a few teams that you really disagreed. But like every team felt like, other than like 5 teams, every team felt like they got better.
Yeah.
So,
and my favorite, Billy O. Stooge got caught on camera losing his shit on the phone because all of his internet went down when he was trying to make a trade with Detroit.
Bill O'Brien.
Oh, I thought the rumor was that Detroit backed out. Was it just the internet went out?
Yeah, the internet went out and they lost all connection with their phones. So then Billy O. Stooge just starts yelling at his secretary because it's her fault.
Dear God.
I hate that guy. He's a fucking asshole, man. I hate him.
Oh, yes, of course. You traded with DeAndre Hopkins. What more can I say? Who does that? Who does that?
All right, you guys. It was great again to spend time with you guys. It's been a fun weekend. It was a lot of teams I think got better. I'll talk to you guys later, and take care.
Hey, Walt, before you go.
Thank you.
Take care. Thanks, Walter.
What's up?
I wanted to, if the people are still there, could you give me, I guess, from worst to first and from first to worst, like who will vault up and who will vault down, if you can say overall.
Oh, as far as the draft, well, good. There's gonna be more. As far right now, I think it's a little much. As far as the teams that did the best, or you mean like teams that went from the worst in their division?
Yeah.
Well, we're gonna have episodes about that because again, we're gonna actually have more episodes, more in depth about it.
No problem.
Good night,
I'll
guys.
have you on to talk about, but it's nice talking to you guys, okay?
All right, cool, man. Walter, thank you very much, man. Sorry for coming late. Later.
No, thank you, man. Thanks for coming on.
All right, bye.
And thank you for everybody who came on. Thanks for watching Draftvice. Thanks for spending time with us. Thanks for dealing with our Wi-Fi and audio issues. If you want, you can follow the podcast at Draftvice on Twitter, at Draftvice_football on Instagram. You can follow me at BROJO. Death is in the end of life. Punch like a delicious drink. Again, thank you for tuning in. And we'll be back soon. Take care. TTFN. For now.
When I woke up this morning, I was feeling pretty dangerous. About the past and about the future.